My prayer this morning was written by Edwin Lynn. Please close your eyes or center yourself in whatever way works for you as we enter into a time of prayer and meditation. Words tell us our thoughts. Silence help us hear our deeper feelings. In silence, we sense the rhythmic measures of all life in the slow, repetitive rhythm of our own bodies. In silence, we feel the ebb and flow of life's breath as the waves of the larger ocean in which we all live. In silence, we sense a larger spiritual presence of which we are all a part. In silence, we sense the coming and going of human pathways, knowing we can ask no more than to have reached out to others in creative and caring ways. And in this silence, we know it is this human touch that gives the longer journey its meaning. Amen and namaste. I love to cook, and one of my favorite things to make is seafood gumbo. The foundation of any good gumbo is a roux, which is a mixture of cooked oil and flour. The roux holds the whole thing together so that all the flavors work in harmony, including the onions, the bell peppers, the sausage, and especially the seafood, which in my gumbo is shrimp, crawfish, and scallops. All of these flavors merge and make a delicious gumbo. But the trick to making a good roux is not really a trick at all. It's just patience. Constantly stirring the mixture on a low heat so that it doesn't burn for 30 minutes to an hour. I see people shaking their heads. When someone asks for the recipe, they often balk at making it simply because of the roux. They abandon the recipe even before they try. A lot of life also requires building a good foundation and being patient in the process. If not, whatever you're doing often fails. For example, every good building or road has a strong foundation. Becoming a doctor requires getting a good education, and it requires a good foundation in the early grades, which is essential for getting into medical school. Yes, patience is important with all of these physical and mental things, but it's even more important in relationships. Because in times of stress, our patience becomes the foundation that holds everything together so that the relationship survives. We have to ask ourselves these questions. Are we willing to be patient for something we love? And this is much more important. Are we willing to be patient for someone we love? I actually have 3 different types of relationships in mind. The relationship we have with ourselves. The casual relationships we have with some friends and relatives. And finally, our primary relationships with the most important people in our lives, our cherished friends and family, and of course, our partners, or spouses. First, I'll tackle the relationship with myself, which is probably the most difficult and crucial one. Even though I'm patient while making a roux, patience is not something I've ever had a lot of. As a child, I would get extremely excited about a vacation or a special weekend coming up. I was so impatient, in fact, that regardless of the event approaching, I would actually make myself ill. Now, you might not believe me, but once I recognized the pattern, I consciously decided to stop getting so excited and to be patient, and I stopped getting sick. Since then, I may have aged a bit, but it seems not much else has changed. Just recently, I allowed myself to get way too worked up over one of Randy's prescriptions and problems with Medicare. I became very impatient and extremely frustrated over the whole thing. I had just gotten over a bout of COVID, and I believe, due to my frustration, I relapsed. I wasn't particularly ill, but I began testing positive again, which affected all of the medical appointments going on in our lives, which are many. I firmly believe being impatient, which is a self-imposed form of stress, can affect our health. Lack of patience caused by excitement or frustration actually leads to a stress response in our bodies, which lowers our immunities and minimizes our ability to fight off illness. This is well documented in medical literature, and I've experienced the repercussions many times in my life. This is also consistent with one of the principal Buddhist beliefs. Excessive attachment leads to suffering. In my case, there was excessive attachments to events and outcomes demonstrated by my impatience, frustration, and excitement, all resulting in me getting ill or suffering. But impatience also affects other aspects of life besides my health. I often make carefully considered plans for the day or week, and then I get frustrated or impatient when something messes up those plans. It could be anything from unseen logistical issues to health concerns or just other people interfering with my plans, all of which can be very frustrating. How dare the universe interfere and wreak havoc on my well-laid plans? Recently, I was working on this sermon, and I had to stop and call CenterPoint Energy. There was a problem with my water heater, potentially caused by a recent CenterPoint technician service call. The customer service representative couldn't help me at all and suggested I call a plumber. I immediately got angry, but I restrained myself. I realized I needed to be patient because she was just doing her job. And I needed to practice what I was in the midst of writing about. Oddly, the universe isn't at all concerned about me and my plans, and I must adjust accordingly. And this sermon is mostly about me processing my need to be patient with myself in the world around me when life doesn't go according to plan. Patience doesn't just happen. It has to be cultivated. I have to choose to be patient. And if I can't be patient with myself, how can I possibly expect that I will be patient with people I care about and love. That provides a nice transition into talking about being patient with other people. Not long ago, a friend of mine brought me a bookmark from a trip she took to Africa. There's an African proverb on it which goes like this: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with someone else. There are times in life when I have to do something on my own, all by myself. But the vast majority of time, whatever I'm doing requires that I do it with other people. And that requires that I have a relationship with them. This church is built on relationships between people working together so that the church will function properly. Relationships help take us much further in life. And all relationships actually require active participation by the parties involved. And all healthy relationships require balance and sharing control. If I'm unable to share control, I'm really wanting to dominate the relationship. And that's not a healthy one. Most of our relationships are what I call casual friendships, where we socialize with each other or participate in activities together, such as church. Generally, these are amicable friendships and things go smoothly. But with many of our casual relationships, it's not always easy sharing control or working with others, because people can be challenging. In fact, at times, we are all challenging to others. In these challenging situations, there's a good old Southern phrase, "Bless your heart." It's often used sarcastically with someone who is especially challenging. But to be honest, I'm fairly certain there's never an occasion where passive aggression, condescension, or sarcasm should be used, and especially not with friends. With casual friends who are challenging, silence, along with patience, are often my only real options. And yes, I have to choose to be patient. Even so, for my own mental health, there is another option. Sometimes I must distance myself from true negativity. In that case, I found the following to be a loving thought or even an actual comment, depending on the situation. I have no energy for drama or anger. I love you and I wish you well. And then I move on. Relationships change. That's just a fact of life. They evolve, devolve, end, and new ones come along. I know I won't get along with everyone, and all my relationships won't be especially meaningful. I must accept the uncertainty inherent in relationships and their changing natures. And I also know that everyone is on a spectrum of one sort or another. So I must choose to be patient with regard to the particular spectrum each person is on. With these casual friendships, I must choose to remember all of these realities and have patience with myself and them. And most of all, I must act with love. That's putting into practice my belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. But with my very closest relationships, I must be even more patient. We all have habits that aggravate those we love. Sometimes we can change those habits, but often we can't. And yet, in spite of those annoying habits, we are still loved and we love. Sufi poet Rumi said, "The art of knowing is knowing what to ignore." He's undoubtedly right, but ignoring some things can be really hard. Years ago, in a Reader's Digest article, a woman recalled that her husband's snoring used to drive her crazy. But now that he was gone, she'd give anything to hear him snore again. That little story has always inspired me, and I hope it inspires you as well. So with patience, we can learn to ignore the things that don't really matter because we love them, and we hope they will do the same for us. When someone is having an especially difficult time, such as with health or some tragedy, friends and loved ones often want to help. But there's one question that continually frustrates me. What can I do for y'all? I seldom have a good response to that question, and there's usually nothing anyone can do to make a bad situation actually better. And I certainly don't have a list of things for people to do. But because I know they care, I choose to be patient, and I respond by saying, "I'm not sure at the moment, but thanks." What I'd really rather hear is a statement and not a question. What I want to hear is something like this: "If y'all need something, please tell me, and if I can help, I will." That's an offer for support, and it's open-ended. And in the future, if I think the person can actually help with what we need, I then have someone to call. But there are also times when we have major differences with close loved ones, often over political or religious differences, and I'm at a loss for words. As Rumi said, that may be a time when you need to ignore something. Other philosophers through the centuries have given us similar advice, but unfortunately, I often don't remember it when I should. One of those philosophers was Confucius. He said, "Very few go astray who comport themselves with restraint." Yes, use some restraint. Don't say or do anything. Another philosopher, Emperor Marcus Aurelius, wrote, "Kindness is invincible, but only when it's sincere, with no hypocrisy or faking. For what can even the most malicious person do if you keep showing kindness? And, if given the chance, you gently point out where they went wrong." Kindness. What a radical idea. Just be kind. But I believe some of the best advice I ever received came from one of my seminary professors, Dr. John Fellers. He was the most liberal professor at my very conservative seminary. I asked him to mentor me, and we met frequently for several years. He wasn't only liberal at school, he was liberal with his family, and all of his children were on the opposite side of the political spectrum. Once I asked him how he dealt with that particular issue at family gatherings like meals. He replied, "I might say, pass the potatoes." It was actually many years later before I realized exactly what he meant, and that was, I love you, we're family, Now pass the potatoes. And that's what you do for the people you love and care about. Sometimes you are silent, but you are also patient, and you embody the love that you feel for them. Dr. Vellers was a wonderful role model, and I have several other people who inspired me with their patience and the care they gave to others in their lives. I learned a lot about patience and love from my maternal grandparents. Theirs was the best of all the relationships in my family. I don't ever recall them arguing or fighting with each other. They shared in everything around the house. But mostly they took good care of each other, and it was obvious that they loved each other. In my teens, my grandmother had a serious illness, and my grandfather simply took over. He did everything she could no longer do, and he never complained. He just did what needed to be done, except dusting. He refused to dust. Apparently there are some limits, and we all laughed at that one. But he did everything else, and that's what you do for someone you love. You take care of them in their times of need. When my grandmother got better, he slowly let her take back on her normal tasks. And eventually, they got back to their old routine. Another person I learned a lot from lived in Mississippi. When Randy and I moved there, we lived across the road from a woman who became a cherished and dear friend, Mrs. Wallace. She was probably the most cheerful, upbeat, and loving person I have ever known. At the time, she was in her early 80s and had been housebound for almost a decade. She had a leg condition called lymphedema, which caused her legs to swell horribly. Home health care professionals visit her twice a week. She had 2 nieces, but no other immediate family. She described herself as a menopause baby, and as the youngest, she had cared for both her parents in their final years and also an elderly sister and brother in their final years. She also cared for her husband, who suffered from heart disease and died in the early 1990s. Personally, she had experienced numerous miscarriages, so it's obvious she had a challenging life. But in spite of it all, she was always in good spirits. She had always been a caregiver, and now friends and her nieces cared for her. Randy and I stepped in, became part of her support team. She transitioned from the one helping to the one being helped. Even so, she was fiercely independent, especially for someone who was almost completely dependent on others. Randy would shop for her, and she gave him explicit instructions on exactly what she wanted him to buy, and that's what he got for her. We always tried to do exactly what she asked of us. I realized a lot about how to help others by helping Mrs. Wallace. Most often, the people we love and want to help in times of crisis have been independent all their lives, and they probably never needed much help. They don't just forget this lifelong independence, and so it's important to afford them the dignity they deserve and to be patient with their needs, their expectations, and their remaining independence. This leads me to some suggestions I'd like to share about caring for others. But I have 2 caveats before I share my suggestions. Sometimes you will need to say no, maybe for safety reasons or just because something's not possible or feasible. So you'll have to be able to say no from time to time. And second, you need to stay healthy yourself. You're no good to anyone if you're sick. So take care of yourself. Now for my suggestions. First, and you should always keep this in mind, when you're helping someone else, it's not about you and your preferences. It's about them and their needs and their preferences. When they ask you to do something in a specific way, to the best of your ability, do it that way. Once again, this isn't about you. It's not important to do something in a way you believe to be the best or most logical way to do it. It's how they want it done. Second, ask them what they need or want instead of assuming you know exactly what they need or want. Just because their body may be failing doesn't mean their mind is as well. Third, wait till they ask for help, which allows them the opportunity to do some things for themselves. And this helps them maintain their independence to whatever degree possible. Fourth, if you're walking with them or helping them accomplish some task, go at their pace. Whatever pace that happens to be, don't push them. It isn't a race. Go at their pace. Fifth, your schedule may no longer be your own. You need to be flexible and adjust your schedule to accommodate their needs. That's just what you do for someone you help. And finally, sometimes they may get confused, angry, frustrated, or emotional. So be patient. They are the ones going through the actual crisis, not you. You are a caregiver, and you can leave and return to your healthy life. They can't. So be patient and be the love they need. Those are my suggestions. Take them or leave them, but be patient. Patience doesn't always come naturally. At least it doesn't for me. So I must choose to be patient. I also believe life provides us with many opportunities to learn to be patient for both ourselves and for those we love. So choose to be patient. It's love's partner in life. Amen and namaste. Now please join me standing as you're able to sing number 354. We laughed, we cried. Since I went way too long, do you want to sing all 4 verses or what?
We're singing all 4 verses, right? Singing all 4 verses. John's boss.
Yeah, all 4.
All 4.